Have you ever been really successful at something you were trying to do, something you were trying to accomplish? If you've ever been successful, what is usually your emotional response? How do you feel when you do something and it goes exceptionally well? Well, for most of us, I want to give you time to answer. For most of us, if we are incredibly successful, what's the emotion that comes to mind? We're happy, right? We're thrilled. We're exhilarated. We're excited. What happens when a sports team wins a championship? How do the players respond? When an Olympian wins a medal, how do they respond after all their work is rewarded? It's with great joy and with celebration. Jonah leads the most successful evangelistic mission in the entire Bible, right? He leads more people to change their life and to follow God than anyone else in the Bible. And what is his emotional response? Is it joy? Is it happiness? Is it exhilaration? No. He's furious. He's angry, which is, you talk about waving a red flag that something's wrong with someone's soul. That's a red flag. And when God changed his mind, as we talked about yesterday, and didn't punish the Assyrians, Jonah's really ticked. And he says, I knew you were going to let him off the hook. That's why I didn't want to come here in the first place. I knew you'd let him off the hook. And God is so patient that God sends a little bush to grow up over his head and to give him shade. And Jonah's sitting there outside the city sulking, waiting to see if God's really going to destroy him or not. And our verse of the day is in verse 9 of chapter 4, which is, "But God said to Jonah, is it right for you to be angry about the bush?" And he said, yes, angry enough to die. Jonah's so miserable. But that question that God asked, and God asked Jonah that question twice, both in verse 4 and in verse 9. Is it right for you to be angry? And friends, anytime you find yourself getting angry, that's the first question you should ask yourself. Is it right for me to be angry? I was actually driving in Hyannis earlier this week, and I put my left signal on well in advance of where I was going to turn left, and I had a driver came up behind me who started honking and honking at me, and I looked in my rearview mirror like, what's wrong? And the man was gesturing at me, and he wasn't necessarily using all of his hand and fingers at the same time, and I could tell he was screaming, and I tried to pull up a little further so he could go around me, and he stayed back there honking, gesturing, and yelling, and then eventually pulled next to me with his window down, leaned out his window and yelled at me a little bit more, and then drove away. And I have to say, gratefully, I was very just calm throughout the whole thing. And I actually felt bad for the person who was obviously got some issues, because I wasn't doing anything illegal or inappropriate. I just was going to make a left-hand turn into a store. But I thought of Jonah, and I almost wanted to ask him, is it right for you to be angry? So often, if we take the time to examine why we're angry, it turns out it's not necessarily the other person or the circumstance. Sometimes it's something in here. That's at least the case with Jonah. And unfortunately, his emotions are misplaced. He's more angry about the people he considers his enemy being spared than he is happy and excited that he's led the greatest transformation, the greatest evangelistic mission in the Bible. The next time you find yourself getting upset, start with the question that God asked Jonah twice. Is it right for you to be angry?